Our next speaker is going to be Gina Page. She is the president of African Ancestry. Gina has a very wonderful background in marketing and business and actually owned her own boutique consulting company in New York City. She is a graduate of Stanford University, where she received a degree in economics. She also has her master's of business administration from the University of Michigan. She joined with Dr. Rick Kittles to form African Ancestry a few years ago. I think you all may be familiar with the company. They were the company who supplied the DNA kits for the PBS special African American Lives that Oprah Winfrey and along with Whoopi Goldberg, I think we all saw that and enjoyed that special. So Gina is here to speak to us tonight about some of the journey that you can take by choosing African Ancestry as your company to trace your DNA heritage. Gina?
Welcome you all to the event. We were very honored when Nicole and Erica and Karen and all of you guys, it seems like there are a lot of you, invited us to participate because we're a Black-owned company, you're a Black-owned company, we're a majority woman-owned company, you're a majority woman-owned company, so we got girl power going on. And I'm from Philadelphia, well my family is from Philadelphia. And then you're from DC. It was a no-brainer. You didn't hear anything about science in that introduction. Everything I learned about ancestry tracing and the genetics behind it, I learned over the past, I'd say about 8 years from working with a prominent geneticist. So usually I ask if there are any scientists in the room, and now I know there's one who is like way up here, so I'm a little intimidated. But I'm glad that you went first because we'll be able to speed through my presentation because you guys are all experts now on DNA and genes. But what my goal is tonight is just to explain to you how ancestry tracing works. You all have probably heard about it. You've probably heard different companies, different results. And I just want to put it into a context for you so that you'll understand how it works. And then we had 2 guests take the test to trace their maternal ancestry anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks ago. One of them we got hot off the press today at 1 o'clock. And so I'll be revealing their results to you at the end of my presentation. Now, I'm here to talk about ancestry. You all know what ancestry is. How many people in here are genealogists or have done some family research? Wow, okay. Not very many. How many people know your parents' names, both your parents' names? Very good. How many know your 4 grandparents' names? Okay. How many people know your 8 great-grandparents' names? Yeah, it gets a little, only 3 or 4, right? So there's a lot about our families that we don't know. And there are health implications of that, as you know, but there's also ancestry implications. I don't even know where to start now because so much of what you said I was going to cover and so much of it is relevant. So I'm just going to go through it briefly. So Dr. Day talked about human demographic history, how modern civilization began here in East Central Africa about 100,000 years ago. And then about 50 to 60,000 years ago, part of this population migrated out of Africa into the Middle East. And then another 10,000 years after that, a portion of that population moved into Europe and populated Asia. And then another 20,000 years or so, they moved into Asia across the Bering Strait by Sarah Palin's house, down into the Americas. And that's how we have Native American ancestry native to the Americas. So sometimes you'll see Native American populations and just visually you'll think that they look kind of Asian. This is why, because they are descendants of Asian populations. Now, for us, those of us here who are African Americans, our migration was a little different, right? We got to the United States a different way. And we're part of this migration from East and Central Africa west. And then we had a forced migration that brought us to the Americas and the Caribbean. And so it's not easy to track that migration, because when you crossed the Middle Passage, you lost everything. You lost your names. Well, I'm not a part of it. We lost our names, our languages, our families were torn apart, our religion, everything. And so once we got here, we were a people torn apart. And so we can't necessarily look at these migration patterns to understand where specifically we came from. Dr. Day talked about mutations and genetic variation, and there's a study which I don't have cited, Dr. Day, but please don't hold that against me, that looked at genetic variation among different populations by continent. And so they found 199 genetic differences, if you will, among populations or lineages in Africa, 98 in Europe, and 73 in Asia. And so what? Well, the reason this is interesting is because it shows how, remember she said 99.9% of us are the same? So we wanted to see, what are the differences? Where are the differences? What are the differences between people who are African lineage versus people who are of European lineage? What do we have in common? What are different? And if you look here, 46 of these lineages are shared by Asians, Europeans, and Africans. So that shows you how much we have in common. But let's look at what's unique. Only 11 of the 98 are unique to Europe. 8, about 10% of the 73 are unique to Asia, but 103 of the 199, over half, are unique to Africa, which makes sense, because if that's where civilization began, and we know that Africa has the most diversity genetically, ecologically, linguistically, you name it, it's on the continent. As those populations migrated out of Africa, they became a subsegment, and then you have another subsegment of the subsegment, and then a subset. You see how it goes. And so as you get farther away from the original, there's less diversity. And looking at the diversity or the variation, as Dr. Day has already told you, is what lets us see what's unique about us as individuals. So you already know about DNA, right? She taught you that. And our DNA code has genes, which you saw. I just have a little different graphic. It's the difference between a PC and a Mac. And so they code for, our genes code for different things: eye color, skin color, weight, height, you name it, our genes determine it. Our personality, I like to tell people, I'm Jerome Page's daughter. I look like him, I act like him, I tell corny jokes like him, and all of that is genetic. And so we get this, as she told you, we get it from our parents. Now, we each inherit 50% of our DNA from our mother and 50% from our father. We're in a museum, so I expect you all to get this right. If your mother's yellow and your father's blue, what color are you going to be? Very good. Very good.